All right. Hello. Welcome to another episode of the Launch Notes podcast. I am Blake Thorne from Launch Notes. Really thrilled to be joined today by Mary Sheehan. Mary is a world-class product marketer with a ton of great experience, currently head of product marketing at Adobe on their Lightroom product. She ran PMM at various startups, has advised companies on product marketing, also the host of the Women in Product Marketing podcast, which I definitely recommend everyone check out. She's got a new project I'm super excited to talk about today. A lot of great stuff to dive into, so let's get to it. Mary, welcome to Launch Notes podcast. Thanks a lot for being here today.
Thanks, Blake. I've been a longtime fan of Launch Notes, and I'm just so happy to be here.
Thank you. That's so great to hear. So I'm really excited. You've got this book on product launches that I want to dive into, and I got a kind of quick look at it. I'm super excited about it. But before we do that, maybe you can give us a kind of quick, because it's always interesting to hear the stories of how people get into product marketing. People have different paths into the field. Maybe you can just kind of give us the quick background on how you ended up in this exciting world of product marketing in the first place.
Yeah, definitely. So like a lot of people in tech, when I started at Google, I started in account management. I didn't really know, what exactly I wanted to do. Got my feet wet, got a really good understanding of how the business worked. And about 4 years in, I started to look around and say, the things I like about my job, which are creating compelling narratives, doing some objection handling, all of these things that I started to get really good at and teach other people within my organization, I thought maybe there's a role where I just do that and I don't do the ins and outs of account management or account executive work anymore. So I started to look around and started talking to people internally, and voila, there was this career called product marketing. So there was this is about 12 years ago, so it sounds kind of silly because there weren't all of these podcasts and communities and things like that. So it wasn't quite as obvious, but I interviewed for the role and got it. And I was lucky to be working for a great manager at the time, Desiree Modametti. She's now the VP at Shopify. And she really taught me the ropes of how to run launches, how to work with stakeholders, how to build amazing content, how to create a product marketing strategy. So all of those things, I felt like I got a really good boot camp. And when I left Google, I went on to be the head of product marketing at a company called AdRoll, which is now called NextRoll, which our buddy and fellow Launch Notes employees, Blake Z, is working at with you.
That's right.
As well. So
yep. Shout out Blake Z. Nice. Very cool. And now at Adobe since the last couple of years now, doing product marketing across, looks like a couple different products. So awesome set of experiences. Definitely some, well-respected names in the tech and, world of product marketing there. I really want to get into this. I want to get into this book I mentioned because you sent me an advanced copy and you've got here. When's it coming out? January
17th. Save the date.
Cool. And it's called The Pocket Guide to Product Launches. I think I'm going to need bigger pockets because this thing is thorough. This is awesome. You've got, and I'm not just trying to just be flattering for the sake of it. I'm super impressed with this. I didn't even had a chance to fully read the whole thing, but I kind of did as aggressive of a skim as I could this morning on it. And you've just got like really tactical stuff in here. I'm super impressed. It's not all, a lot of times stuff like this, it's kind of like theory, or you get sort of like the skeleton of stuff you could do, but it doesn't really, this is like a detailed map on how to really kick ass at product launches, which obviously near and dear to us here at Launch Notes. So we care a lot about the topic, but super impressed by what you put together here. So yeah, I just want to say that first. Really nice work on this.
Thank you. Yeah. And actually that was the point of it. So becoming a new manager, when I started leading a team at AdRoll, I started taking notes on how do I scale myself and how do I really start to teach people to run world-class launches. So this has been an effort of love in many years to kind of put all of these thoughts together. But you're right, it's really tactical. And the point of it is to be able to actually take it for a weekend or a few hours, skim through it, go into the parts where you're, not as strong on, be able to run a really kick-ass launch. So that's really the point of it. I also have a website. So if you get the book, you'll see the website where you can download some templates as well that will help to really kickstart this whole launch process for you and really get it started. So Yeah,
Nice.
really excited. Glad you saw the thesis of it just by reading it. I didn't tell you that.
Yeah. What's the URL on the website? We'll be sure to drop that in the show notes.
Yeah, so it's productlaunch.pro.
Nice. Nice. Okay. Productlaunch.pro. What did you, obviously you've got, the best thing you need to put together a resource like this, which is like the years of lived experience. But a lot of times with this kind of project, like you can really learn a lot, even though you've done all this, like you learn a lot when you sit down to kind of write it all out. What sort of surprised you the most or jumped out to you as you kind of put pen to paper on this whole resource?
I'd say two things. One is, as I've been writing it, it's really been the course of many years. And finally, you have to lock the manuscript at some point to get it to the publisher. So as I was moving into different roles, so after AdRoll, I worked as the head of PMM, senior director of PMM at other smaller startups. And then I actually started a consultancy. So as I was getting all of these different experiences, I was actually updating the book as I went. So I felt like, product marketing is this evolving role. Things are changing. You're learning more. Now I have more experience in consumer. So it was hard to stop, I guess, because things kept changing. So that was
True.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the other thing is that something that's really not emphasized in a lot of the things that we talk about in the business world is how important internal communication and getting a killer team together, your DC, your driver, accountable, collaborative, and informed is, and how important that is to the success of your project. And I think we don't think about that enough. And so as part of the book and part of the thing I've always said to any team I manage is you should spend 10% of your time thinking about how you're going to communicate this and operationalize this internally. And so I focus on that a lot in the book because that is really what is so important about making a launch really work. And I think you can probably relate as a fellow product marketer, we don't always have budget. We don't always own all the channels. We don't own the roadmap. So we have to use influence to get out our strategy and to get things executed. So I think a big part of that is what I try to talk about in the book, how to actually work with all of the different teams you need to get them on board and how to make them feel not only like they're doing a task for you to make the launch go well, but to make sure that they're really thinking about how they can be part of the success too and have ownership themselves. So making everyone at the company really excited about this launch. So that's a big focus area that might surprise people that are reading it and just expecting like a checklist kind of thing.
Yeah, I noticed that. I was going through, I was going to bring that up. You've got a whole, large section around internal alignment and sort of dialing in the stakeholders, setting expectations, communicating, planning, prepping, everything that you need to do around that. And it's so important. I think it's such a missed skill for so many PMMs, or such like an under-realized, opportunity to set a launch up for success when you're actually good at that. And, it can be easy to sort of get hung up on, well, that's just kind of internal politics, or we're all on the same team, so what's the big deal? Why isn't everyone just, but there's a lot of baggage around these kind of conversations, but it's like really like full stop. The best marketers I've worked with are extremely good at this. And I don't think that's an accident for sure.
Definitely. Yeah. How do you become the quarterback of this launch and make everyone play on the same playground?
Yeah. And people don't, especially I think the perception of larger companies, like if you are at like a Google or an Adobe or like, an Atlassian where I was, folks can sort of expect like, oh, product marketing there must be incredible. Like if you want to send an email, you've got an email team. If you want to do PR, you've got a PR team. If you want to, do digital ads, you've got a whole digital ad team. And it's like, yeah, but you have to like coordinate and line up and convince. And there's a whole sort of skill set around, getting those resources from those different teams and like getting on their radar and getting in their queue and lining all that up, kind of triangulating all that for your launch. Like that's a very kind of critical thing to know how to do. If you're coming from a startup, you might think you just have to like ask people to do it and then they do it. It's not like that.
Well, it's so different. I mean, thank you for bringing that up because I think it's a really important skill set. And like you mentioned, it's not easier. In a lot of ways, it's harder. So when I worked at a 100-person company first up, the CEO weekly got up and told us all what the biggest priorities are. And I could lean over to him at his desk and say, hey, Gary, make sure that you talk about this launch. And so there we go. That's our launch announcement. But here, you're competing with a lot of other priorities of these different teams, like you said. And so you have to really flex those influence skills, make sure they know well in advance what the roadmap is, why this helps their goals that they're trying to achieve. And so you have to be able to speak so many languages of these different organizations and product, campaign marketing, design, and really understand all the things that make them tick and why they'd really want to care about this. So yes, I'm glad you've also had that experience so you can relate to that. Oh
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No, it's just an incredible resource. And kind of for folks listening to this, I love the approach you have. Like, honestly, like reading this book, like kind of feels like, being a PMM and having a really fantastic manager, because you're giving like really tactical, like ideas, examples, templates, recommendations. Like I said already, like it's not all theory. And even with, whether it's internal alignment or launch checklists or stuff like that, like you've really made an effort to make this like super, super actionable and tactical. And, that's really, really refreshing to see.
Thanks, Blake. I'll use that quote on the back of the book now.
Please, yeah.
That's what I wanted.
Please do. Yeah, no. Yeah, mission accomplished. Anything else that stood out to you as like, as you kind of started to get it kind of like codified on paper, like either an under-realized opportunity for product marketers or a part of launches that maybe, people misunderstand or don't have clicking the way they could?
Well, one thing I'm always surprised about, and so there's a section on this in the book, is how to track your launch. And I've done, presentations about this now, and I talk about this a lot. And it's shocking how many people are not tracking the impact of their launch, or they're tracking what I call vanity metrics, like impressions. So I share this story in the book. But when I was at Google, we had this really amazing launch at South by Southwest, like all the bells and whistles you could possibly imagine. And then, I'm presenting the launch metrics post-launch the week after, after we've had the champagne and everything, we're, so excited about this. And I'm presenting all the retweets we got from, the New York Times and all of these amazing agencies and all these impressions. And the director says to me, does this matter? How does this actually impact our business goals? And I was like, what? My jaw just dropped. So that moment was really clarifying for me in terms of, even though, those were the things as kind of a junior product marketer I was told to track, they didn't matter. The director was like, this is going to help me grow my business. This is going to help our quarterly or annual numbers. So really always tying that back to what matters to your company level goals and the executives you're working with. So I think, I focus on that. I like talking about that stuff now, but I think for some reason it's a little intimidating for product marketers of all levels to just really go deep in the numbers, but also to question things. And I think there's this mental block with people. They're like, well, if I don't know what the number is, it must just be me. Or if I don't know what the goal is, it must be me. But ask the dumb questions.
Yeah.
People probably don't know. If it's not really obvious and flashing like a red beacon, like the executive should be talking about it more. So kind of a call to arms to say, how do we all start to understand our numbers of our business more, talk about them, and integrate them into our plans so your launch strategy makes a lot of sense and everyone in the company is benefiting from it. And you're never going to have that so what conversation like I did.
Yeah, gosh, that is such like an evergreen, just like tricky topic and like hard problem to pin down, right? Especially at a large organization like your example, illustrates there, where it's like you might think like you and your manager are on the same page, or like at a startup, it might be like you and the founder, and it's like, cool, we're kind of aligned on what success looks like. But, the more kind of cooks get in the kitchen, the easier it is for that, the director, the CFO, or someone like that to hop in with like, hey, like tie this to revenue for me, or like tell me a story that kind of illustrates this moving business goals forward, which really are fair questions too. And I think the best marketers I've worked with don't shun from that question, they're like really effective at kind of telling a story for that person too. And I think you give some good examples of how you can do that in the book, which is really cool to see. Yeah. Any other suggestions? I'm curious to spend more time on this topic because it is such like a tricky problem for product. Like, how do you measure the launch, or like, was this launch successful, or, you know, how are we going to get the right data to know like what we're trying to do or what needle we're trying to move, or if this had an impact. Any other sort of like bits of advice or kind of tactical things you've done to overcome this?
Yeah, so a couple of things come to mind. One is really understanding the North Star goal, which I think is really hard to get to sometimes. But sometimes you'll have a launch that's all about repositioning your company, and you're really actually trying to get new users into the pipeline, you know, increasing your MQLs or getting new visits to your website. That is what the goal is. But sometimes you're launching things that are for your existing customers. So adoption is the really important metric. So you're looking at you're looking at MAU metrics. So that simple thing, and just saying, hey, what is the one thing, if we succeed at this, will we, you know, is that the marker of success? So getting everyone on alignment, and sometimes you just have to make the hard decision and say, this is the primary goal, this is the secondary. When you start to have 4 of those, you're not going to hit any of them. So having that one primary goal, really getting alignment and really understanding. I'd also say, and I talk about this in the book, and this is not rocket science, you probably talk about this all the time on the podcast, but tiering your launches. So every launch is not going to be the ARR driver of the year for your company, or the, you know, new user acquisition funnel driver, and, you know, make this huge splash. So probably gonna have, I call them, you know, tier 0, tier 1, 2, 3. And that's why launch notes, I think, is so helpful actually for this, for your tier 3 launches. But tier 0 is like your one launch a year that is going to put you on the map. What is the biggest deal? Tier 1, once a quarter. Tier 2, a few. Tier 3 is your release notes kind of thing. So that's how I think about it, at least. You know, t-shirt sizes, whatever you want to talk. I think aligning on that, and I think that's always a tricky conversation, especially if you're working with kind of newer product managers or product managers that haven't worked with product marketing recently. They might, it feels like you're killing their darlings if you're like, this is a tier 2. But really what you're trying to say is, these are the ways that we're strategically going to market, and what our customers will understand and, you know, connect with the most, but also what's going to be the biggest driver for our business. And so sometimes a UI overhaul is that it took so much engineering manpower, but it's not going to move the needle and be the sexiest thing you want to talk about on stage. So just really having those hard conversations. And sometimes you need to up level it to the management level or the executive level to get alignment on what those tiers are. But you as a product marketer should be the driver of the external tiers. And it doesn't take away from any of the amazing work the product and eng team has done, but you need to make a plan for it so you're able to execute with the resources that you have in the best way. So those are some things I really think about to help you set the stage.
I'm so glad you bring this up. This is a great topic. And one thing I found helpful, I did this at my last company where I kind of came into a Series A startup as the first product marketer. So sort of standing up product marketing, working with, you know, dev and product and design and the leadership on this, and setting up launch tiers for the first time. I have also found, and maybe you cover this a little bit in your book, but again, it's not rocket science, but one thing I've found that's really helpful on this regard, you have your tiers, and it's like, that's the order of importance, the size of sort of noise you're going to make. Set some definitions to those tiers around what is the impact we're trying to drive here. And that's stuff like, you know, very practically, like, is this going to get us, is this feature, you know, is this feature improvement product designed to acquire new customers? Is it designed to win out when we're being, you know, compared to a competitor? Is this designed to hold off churn? There's a bunch of different stuff you can do, but it's like, when you do that, and then you can practically talk to, and then you're not saying to your product manager or your dev team, like, hey, this is a small launch, because they're doing the thing going like, they might be going like, what the hell? This took us forever to do. This was like a really hard thing to do. Like, what do you mean it's a small launch? And when you can tie it to the impact, like, then it's very clear. It's like, Well, yeah, like I totally agree. It's like, it's an important launch. It's important work. But, you know, would you agree this is more about delighting current customers than necessarily, you know, getting someone's attention who's never heard of us? And they could go, you know, you can easily see like, oh, well, yeah, obviously it does that. And it's like, okay, cool. Well, like, here's why we're going to make less marketing noise around it and more like, you know, it's more of a, the feature speaks for itself, does the intended thing on its own. It's like, that's a great way to get, you know, engineering, design, PM a little more in line with your, you know, with your launch tiers and not have them be so like offended that you call their, you know, feature small or something.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. I love how you connected the two there too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll have to go change that in my book now.
Well, we had, see, like you were saying, like it's hard to sort of like sit down and write out this stuff because there's always something new to think of and always some, you know, there's always a lot of change in this field, which is super exciting. And yeah, and one last, I think you bring this up in the book too, like one last point on metrics. Obviously align with your product team. Like a good product leader is going to know how the feature or development or product connects with the business strategy. That's like a big part of their job. So align with them on like what you're, you know, it's not always like a clean, like, hey, the product goal is this and the launch goal is that. Sometimes that happens, but obviously you should be having that conversation with your product leader because they know the business impact they're trying to drive too. And you need to be kind of in lockstep there.
Such a good point. And I've rarely had a disconnect with the product leader. It's more the product manager, line managers that I've had to have harder discussions with. But having, again, part of influence, part of product marketing, making sure that you talk to everyone before you have those harder conversations, you have a little bit of backup, I think is super important. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah. And product teams I've found are really good at setting goals. One kind of, I wouldn't call it a trick, but one tactic I've stolen from product teams is, you know, if the metric they're trying to move doesn't exist, they'll create it. And I don't mean they're like making something up, but like they will combine some, you know, a couple things going on, like even like an MQL or an SQL is a good example of this. So it's like, an SQL is not an organic existing thing, like a page view or $1 in revenue or a number of a new customer or something. That's like a triangulation of a couple different things where you say like, okay, like if someone's a lead and they also have these 3 attributes, then we'll call them an SQL and we're going to measure against that. Product teams do this all the time with like activation metrics or, you know, customer engagement metrics or whatever. Like we created this, you know, highly engaged customer score, the HEC, and we're trying to move HECs this quarter. Sometimes marketers like don't kind of turn the corner on that and realize like, you know, not every metric you measure has to be a page view or an open rate or an activation number. Like you can kind of combine a few things together and like figure out your North Star that way. So
that's a good point. Yeah. And I'm blown away at Adobe at the metrics and things that we're looking at and how clever it is when we can find that there is an impact of, you know, XYZ metric that helps impact the business goal. Okay, let's start tracking this instead. And that's been really cool to see. I do think sometimes though that you need to, like I mentioned in the beginning, you do need to have that top line goal. That's the most important. And then there's metrics underneath that help you track that. And then there's 100%. A certain level in which you cut it off. Like you really can't have more than 3 metrics and more than one goal that you're driving towards, I think. So for the launch to be really successful. So there is a point where you cut it off, but yeah, you can be creative about what those are as long as you do think those are indicators of driving real business impact. Totally.
You've been trying to get my timing straight. When you joined Adobe, had they already done the kind of transition to SaaS, to cloud focus that they did?
Yeah.
Adobe traditionally was like an on-premise product that really,
They started that in about 2009, 2010. So yeah, I'd already been there for that. But it's been interesting to work. So I started actually in our digital experience arm, which is more of our enterprise offering. And now I work on Creative Cloud. So I've got to see so the B2B side and then now the consumer side of the business. And so I got to see a lot of different operational models and it's been really cool. It's, you know, a lot of amazing people work there and a lot of operational excellence and definitely learning every day. So that's fun.
And for folks who don't know, like Adobe has this like it's a pretty nerdy thing, so it doesn't get you don't hear about it a lot. But like in terms of like pivoting from an on-premise business model to cloud, like Adobe's got this iconic, amazing story of how it really is like set the model for like literally I was at Atlassian and they were, they're still doing this, like kind of shifting to a cloud focus, like for all these other companies that started in the on-premise world. And this is kind of just becoming a tangent now, but like we actually were big product launch nerds at Launch Notes. I'll dig it up and put it in the show notes. I'll send you a copy too, Mary. We did a pretty detailed write up and breakdown of how Adobe did that launch, because the launch of a full kind of like turning a whole battleship toward this different deployment model that comes with a lot of stuff is like a crazy, complex success story that Adobe pulled off. And for folks who don't, Salesforce gets all the credit for being a cloud pioneer. They totally are. But in terms of going from on-prem and pivoting to SaaS, like it's super, super impressive what Adobe did. Someone's got to write a book about that someday, but I'll definitely share that.
That's such a good point. Yeah,
we wrote a couple thousand words about it. Yeah.
I'd love to see that. And it is really impressive. At our offices in San Jose, there's every version of Photoshop
nice.
That we had in the boxes that you could buy. And I was like, that was a huge deal when we changed.
Before the Creative Cloud era, it definitely was. Yeah.
Well, looking forward to reading that.
And it's a good, not to turn this into a Launch Notes commercial, but a lot of what we're talking about in terms of like launch tiers and launch momentum and continuously, launching is like, it is a new era for folks who do sort of SaaS marketing, or definitely a divergence from the traditional enterprise software marketing, where it was like, we've got the 3.0 product and it's coming out in February because it always comes out in February, and we're doing our one big launch of the year and we're bundling everything into that. The way products are shipped, built, delivered, like that's the reason Launch Notes exist, is to give folks another channel to communicate these continuous updates. But yeah, it just sort of underscores the importance for product managers and product marketers to kind of think differently and more continuously than maybe they traditionally had.
That's such a good point. I always relate it to the fact, so my husband is an architect. And they have very serious deliverables. The blueprints are locked. Yeah. The building permit is set. The building is built. And there's not iteration on that. So we kind of laugh talking about our jobs, because I sort of feel like as a product management team and a product marketing team, your work is never done. You're kind of like, we can always, fix that bug. We can always, add another release. But there's pros and cons to each. But thankfully, 100%. Companies like yours exist to help you communicate the many new things and the cadences that are needed to keep up with modern software development. So yeah, absolutely. I want to change gears to another topic that you spend a lot of time on the book that I was super excited to see, which is customer surveys, customer insights, user surveys, user insights, kind of collecting, talking to the customer, talking to market and prospects, and kind of collecting those insights and data. Another thing where it's like, most everyone recognizes the value of it, but like tactically, it's always just hard to do. Like it's always a challenge. So like how you do that, any kind of top of mind, like realizations or tips about, and you've got some great tips in the book, but when it comes to like, hey, I got to talk to more customers, how do I actually do that? Yeah. So I wrote this book with people with a startup budget in mind. I'm not writing this from a huge corporate budget, just to be clear, because I think there's a huge difference. And I feel lucky that I've gotten both experiences. So I do give a lot of tips in there, but I think one thing that I would take away from what I was writing is that use the channels that you already have and the resources that you have. So is your marketing team going to an event? You should go to that event. Bring an iPad with with the survey, give people $5 Starbucks cards. I've done that. Walking around, hey, you want to take this survey? It'll take you 30 seconds. Or you have a great email channel in-app. How can you get survey data and information? And then can you use your email or in-app channels to help you get people to take interviews with you? And then there's a lot of companies out there now that provide interview connections. So you can say, I want to Respondent.io comes to mind if you're familiar with that one. Yeah. You put in the parameters of the demographics and the type of job you're looking for to interview.
Yeah.
And then you can connect the dots. So there's ways that you can be scrappy about it where you don't have to hire a firm for, you know, a huge budget to be able to put this into action. So I'd say, you know, some research is better than no research. I think sometimes we get analysis paralysis by just thinking, oh, wow, this is such a huge undertaking. But if you talk to 5 customers, you will start to see patterns. And I always think 100%. The smartest product managers, product marketers, and leaders are constantly bringing in anecdotes from the customer. So even if it's not for a specific project, figure out how you can talk to customers on the regular and have that point of view. And that really helps you connect the dots to what you're doing and just makes everyone a better worker and makes everyone really get in that mindset of the customer. So some is better 100%. Than nothing. Start today.
Yeah. I love that. And you're absolutely right. It's sort of like, find ways to interject that conversation or to pull those insights in the places and forums and channels where you're already having a connection with, whether it's the customer or the market. Like, work where you already are. Like, 100% amazing advice. And I would underscore on that too, like, any opportunity to kind of cliche here, but like 2 birds with 1 stone kind of stuff, where it's like, great, we're at this conference, we're gonna find some leads, close some deals, we're also gonna get some market research out of it, or we're doing this like even candidly, like for us at Launch Notes, like content like this is an example. Like we're here kind of like interviewing, you know, experts and practitioners like you because we believe it's great content, but it's also like there's a lot of insightful stuff in here that we can, you know, filter back to the product team. And there's a lot of like, you know, advice and insights and data that is useful for us, not just as an organization that's doing marketing content, but as a team building a product and trying to learn from the people who do this kind of work. It's super valuable. And that's a nice 2-for-1 for us. I'm so glad you brought up conferences too. Like that is such like, it's right. They're back. Yeah. But yeah, that is like the best, I don't know, like petri dish or proving ground for insights, research on the fly in really scrappy ways, testing out your positioning and messaging, like to be able to like pitch your thing in person to people cold, like get 100 reps in one day doing that. Like, man, like talk about learning how your positioning or messaging is resonating, like pitch it to 100 real humans face to face in a 10-hour period. And you'll learn a lot about how your positioning and messaging is getting across.
And good point for that you just brought up on the reps. I mean, scale your resources, like all the teams, like have everybody have a 5-minute recap with you. Salespeople don't love putting a lot of notes together and sending them all to you in a really formatted way. So make it easy for people to give you that feedback. Have a roundtable after, you know, the big conference, give everyone some snacks and get all the feedback that you can, because if you're having everybody go to those kinds of events already, see what's working. And, you know, I'm a big fan of just generally having councils where you have, you know, sales reps and marketing together so you can understand all of the things that are happening together and really start to make change. So I think that's, you know,
that's awesome.
Use the resources you have. The sales channel is a big one. No, 100%. We, one last little side story on that. We did, the last startup I was at, we did an in-person HR conference last year, and we were kind of doing a big kind of customer persona for us was HR, and a lot of employee onboarding was kind of a really core use case. So the part of our like lead magnet, like our little booth gimmick was I printed out a big poster board and we put, what's your biggest employee onboarding headache? You mentioned Starbucks. We had win a $500 Starbucks gift card or win a, you know, Starbucks for a whole year. And we had people write their kind of pain points on these cards and pin them to the booth. And that was kind of how you participated in the contest. So it was a great, like kind of lead magnet for our booth. It was also just like great insights for our product team. Cause it's like, great. Like we got 500 people in this persona who have now told us their biggest pain point. And we're able to kind of categorize those, triangulate them. We can follow up with people to talk about it if we want to. And then a third opportunity there was just like, we got to do some content around that and got to like kind of put that in a blog post and share that with people who thought it was interesting. So there's a ton of great opportunity there. Yeah, it was a kind of cool
360 moment there. But yeah, you make a great point about just like getting, kind of getting scrappy at these events and carrying the iPad around. I love that. I got to try that too. I want to spend some time. I want to be sure to talk about the podcast work that you have been doing too, because I know you've done some incredible content on the other side of the microphone as well. So yeah, anything you can tease out about, what might be coming up on your podcast, and, a little on like what it is and where folks can find more?
Yeah, definitely. So the podcast is called Women in Product Marketing, and you can get it wherever you listen to podcasts. So Apple, Spotify, we have a website too. I'll send over to you. Mm-hmm. And it's been such a dream side gig for me because I get to interview all of these amazing women in leadership positions that either are currently PMMs or are now CMO level, who have been able to build their careers in a really incredible way and share all of their insights. So we tend to talk to, the Fortune 500 or sort of unicorn companies, and also, like I mentioned, people that have just shown a lot of success in product marketing, and we geek out on it. So it's very tactical. Like you mentioned, we talk about everything from pricing to messaging to growing your career. I've had a few people on the show that are newer to product marketing. So they talk about their recent journeys, becoming product marketers, how they interviewed, how they lobbied for themselves. So it's really incredible network of women now. So we've done a bit over 40 episodes, and season 5 will be launching. We're starting to record it in the new year, and so it'll launch sometime in probably early spring. But yeah, it's great. There's tons of episodes if you ever just need to go and freshen up on a topic. They're really easily labeled, but I think it's really fun. It's been really cool, and it's obviously a niche group, but it has a pretty amazing following, and I feel really fortunate I've been able to work on this, and it's really helped me connect to all of these young women and men that are early in their careers that have been able to make a pivot because they now feel more confident hearing about what the product marketing career could look like. And so I get notes about that at least weekly now about, hey, I was in finance and I wasn't really finding my footing. Started listening to your podcast. I felt more confident about it, and I went for the product marketing job. So like
that's awesome. Yeah.
So amazing to me to hear.
That's cool.
So it's been great. It's just, I started it during COVID, like deep COVID 2020. And now it's been going on a couple of years, and it's just personally been really rewarding, and it's great content. So you're recommending it. I also recommend it.
That's awesome. And like really great. What an awesome resource that you're putting together, especially for folks early in their career. And some of the podcasts I've done with this, with this show or others, like it's so awesome. And it's like, I'm still getting started and figuring stuff out here. Like I'm no expert, but it's so awesome when people reach out and say, hey, that they got some value out of that, or, they learned something, or like, what a cool resource that you all are putting together with that. That's like really, 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 really awesome, like work to do. And I'm sure you've learned a ton and gotten to meet some really incredible people. Yeah.
I learn something every time too. And it's really amazing. Yeah. Makes it hard again as the book project's coming together, and I'm just evolving in my own career, but I really learned something in every episode, and I'm like, I'm going to try that in my own job. So it's really cool.
Yeah. And it's a great opportunity. I've found young people kind of either people trying to break into a field or just getting started in a field. They kind of think they're going to cold email the CEO, or I'm going to like cold email Elon Musk and pick his brain for 50, like not going to happen. But a lot of times what you can do, like, listen to the people, like for one, like they're more in the level that you should be like getting advice from too, is like, you want to be hearing from practitioners, right? Like, listen to episodes like Women in Product Marketing, or shows like Women in Product Marketing, like shoot a cold LinkedIn message or email to someone who was on a show and let them know. Like, it's really, really nice to like, let someone know like, hey, like I learned something, or I have a follow-up question. Like in my experience, folks who do, shows like yours are super, super willing to do that. And it's a great opportunity to connect with people if that's what you're trying to do. Like, stop trying to email Mark Andreessen.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, these are the people that will 9 out of 10 times respond to you. So I'm happy to continue the conversation.
100%. All right. I could talk about product launches all day. I'm sure you do too. But I want to wrap up with 2 just kind of fun ones. One is what's maybe a piece of conventional wisdom or a sort of status quo belief among others who might be, doing a similar job to you that you would push back on? or like what's an opinion or status quo belief in product marketing that you would challenge the hardest?
The one that comes to mind is that all of your stakeholders have to be happy in order for you to be a successful product marketer. Mm-hmm. And the reason I want to push back on that is you have to flex the muscle of saying no to be an effective product marketer. And I think that sometimes upsets your stakeholders at first, but
yeah,
I think if you have a strong strategic plan, if you can show the things that you're adding value to, if you can show why doing 16 vertical one sheets doesn't actually make that business impact that you're trying to do and let them down easy, I think you can start to build a lot more respect for yourself and respect for the position. So maybe another way to say this is respect is more important than getting everyone to like you in your job. And I think that's really hard for women and also a lot of times hard for people newer in their career, but having that strategic plan and not saying yes to everything, because you will not be able to focus on the highest priority things. So that's really what comes to mind. And I even say this to my teams, say no before you say yes, because you need to kind of figure out, hey, I already have this huge plan. I have all these different things. Is this going to be a high priority needle mover for me? And it's get out of that mindset of like, oh, if I do this one little worksheet for someone, they'll like me and then that'll give me brownie points. Like sometimes you wouldn't need to do stuff like that, but not the regular operating model.
That's great advice. Yeah, great advice. And it can be hard to do in the moment. What I often try to remind myself is like the maybe uncomfortable no now is a lot better than the yes now and the disappointing that person later on when we didn't have time or we couldn't put proper care into it or like the deliverable wasn't, as expected. Like, kind of letting people down on your own terms is way better than the alternative a lot of times.
And even asking questions like, why would you like these 16 vertical one sheets? What are you trying to accomplish with it? And sometimes you can say, oh, actually, we're doing this amazing HR piece, the 360 review with HR managers. It's going to be a content white paper that we're going to send directly to them. They'll say, oh, wow, that sounds even better than I was thinking. So sometimes it's just that they don't know, and they're just trying to think of the first thing that comes to mind. So asking questions and aligning them to your plan and making sure people understand how hard it is for all this content to get created. Yeah. You have to focus on the ones that are the highest impact. So those are some
absolutely. And you're prepare for that as a product marketer. You're going to get a lot of requests for a deliverable, and it's kind of your job to understand the end result that they're trying to drive with the deliverable and figure out if that's actually the right deliverable or if it's something else, right?
Yeah. Your CEO is not going to care if you did 16 vertical one sheets. That can't be tracked.
Right. Right. So last question, again, just for fun, but I like to ask product people about products. You get good answers. What's a product that you're checking out or, excited about lately? Could be on the work side or even just like a B2C product you think is cool.
So I'm really getting into generative AI, and I have a lot of examples, but the one that I'm really obsessed with is Jasper AI, which you just had Megan Heaney Anderson 100%. On.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's so mind blowing. So basically it's content, it's text generative AI. So you can put in a LinkedIn post that you're thinking about, or even I've been putting in some blurbs I need to write, or, I put in my bio the other day for another project and it made my bio sound so amazing. So you can also put in some prompts and it'll help you do a blog post. So in the future, you might see some blog posts for me that's written by the robots, but I'm just having a lot of fun getting it to tighten up my copy and make it really punchy. And I'm not a copywriter, so this Jasper is my copywriter. So I'm really loving it, and it's so fun. And this technology is just incredible.
I could not agree with you more. We are fans and paying customers of Jasper over here. Like you mentioned, Megan was on the show, and there's like incredible marketing leader to talk to. But what an exciting time! Like, it's exciting to be sort of like in the mix in like businesses with all this, and it's like we're going to see cool companies and cool products and stuff, but it's also just like, it's an exciting time to be a consumer of all this stuff. Like we're going to live through this era of like all this cool new stuff coming up. So
totally.
it's going to be a lot of fun for sure. Great example. So, okay. We can wrap up, but definitely encourage folks check out it's the Pocket Guide to Product Launches. That's in January. And then January 17th. Good day. I know what I'm asking for my birthday now. Then and then check out the Women in Product Marketing podcast, available, I'm sure, wherever podcasts are found. Anything else you think folks should check out, or if they want to take our advice and say hi, connect with you, how could they do that?
Yeah, please reach out. LinkedIn is a great channel for me. Happy to continue the conversation or answer any questions. And yeah, please support the product marketing community by checking out the podcast, buying the book, leaving a review, hopefully a good review.
I'm sure. Yeah. Anyone who checks us out will be blown away as I was. So thanks so much for being here. We'll have to have you back because there's even more to talk to, I bet, but this was a ton of fun. So thank you so much, Mary. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Blake. This has been a blast.
All right. Take care.